Welcome to the show. 10-4 at your door. We got all it all for you. Touchdown on that plane. 10-4 in a plane. More than just a podcast for you.
Welcome to another edition of the 10-4 YouTube show. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Jamesetta, and joining us today are two of our regulars, Coach Kevin Toliver and Randy Wade, but we also have a special guest, Mr. Kevin VanDyke. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Hello, Jamesetta and Coach Toliver and Randy. Currently, I own a fitness club in St. Augustine, Florida called Anastasia Fitness. I've owned it for 6 years. We work with the general population and helping them achieve a better level of fitness. Our motto is to live better longer. And so that's what we're trying to do with the people who choose to work out with us. I also coach middle school basketball at Murray Middle School in St. Augustine and have been involved with a local AAU club for the last 10 years called the St. John Celtics. And I have a wife that we're celebrating 30 years anniversary in November, and 3 children that I've raised. They've all gone through St. Augustine High School, and fortunately, they did well in school, and they all became Florida Gators, like my wife and myself. So we kind of have a little bit of a Florida Gator thing going on, as well as a St. Augustine thing.
Oh,
That's awesome.
glad to have you.
And, James, I've owned a gym, but most of my career I was an executive. I started out as a CPA and came up through the ranks of financial management, and then was a president of a large wholesale distribution company. I've started an insurance agency, and so I have a little entrepreneurial side as well, where I've started businesses and owned businesses. And today, right now, it's the gym business that I'm in, and then trying to help the young kids in St. Augustine reach their potential.
We are definitely glad to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
We're going to dive right in. So when you go out into the world, many people say that they watch sports to get away from their problems in their life. More and more, especially over the last 4 years, not to say exclusively in the last 4 years, but especially in the last 4, we see that athletes are using their platforms to promote many causes. Is there a place for politics in sports? Thoughts?
I'll go first. I think there's a place for everything in sports. I think you shouldn't take it too far, no matter what, whether you were talking about cancer or whether you're talking about other things that sports they put in front and on the front line before they play to show people that they care about and stuff like that. But I think it's a place for everything. A lot of people say that politics shouldn't be in there, but it's part of our world, and the thing about it is sports is just so important. So many people watch it. So many people are passionate about it. So if you can get a positive message across, why not do it? What do I think?
I think politics are tricky, but it's part of life, and it comes in waves. And right now we're at a really high wave of politics in our everyday life. It wasn't that long ago we wouldn't be a question of what we'd be talking about. But I was thinking about the picture behind me with Muhammad Ali when he was drafted, and he chose not to go to Vietnam. I thought that may have been an incredible example of where politics entered sports life. And then Michael Jordan, he's never really spoken up, and he was always criticized as a guy who never really, chose to go outside. So, I think everybody's going to find their way. And what happens in the locker room is the real issue about politics, not necessarily us doing it, but can the players and the coaches and the organization find a common way to stay together and not let, the off-field stuff tear it apart. That's kind of what I worry about, is these these athletes trying to be the best they can be, but still having to deal with this, these outside influences.
Yeah.
Well, that covers a lot between you, Randy, and Kevin. Man, that's one of the biggest things that I don't like politics, because, it's been going on for centuries. And at the end of the day, it just, you see more of it ruining a lot of lives and relationships and organizations and, countries, cities, states. I mean, it never has the positive upside to the entirety of it all. So, yes, there's a place for it, but it's how do we manage that so that we don't do the opposite of what, should be done. And Kevin brought up a good point. This is one of my biggest pet peeves when, I coach a team or I'm involved in something heavy, is outside interference and negative outside influences. I hate it, with a passion, because it continues to ruin lives and families and organizations and business. I mean, it just taints everything, and some people just don't look at it that way. And so I find a lot of the politics is being selfishness, for whoever it may be or for whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I'm going to say one thing before Jamesetta comes in and breaks that knowledge down. But like that Joe Biden and Trump, that debate was a debacle. I mean, it was crazy. It was so much disrespect in it. So many people watched it abroad from other countries. I know they just felt a certain type of way about it. I felt like a lot of people called me when President Trump said something about the Big Ten, about bringing it back in and stuff like that, and that's his opinion and stuff like that. But it's just like they got to tighten up, man. These people represent our country. They got to tighten up and actually represent our country the right way, as far as the way they present themselves and professionalism. We tell our kids about being professional, but you see the president of the United States and maybe the future president of the United States arguing the way they're doing, telling each other to shut up and not having common mutual respect for each other. How do you expect us to be normal Americans and respect each other, and they can't respect each other and communicate in a civil way? It's just shameful. I want to say that, though.
I think at its core, really, politics is just how groups make decisions. It's who decides what, where things go, who gets what, when, where, and how. And honestly, I don't know that athletics in the United States, organized athletics, it's never not been political, because there were rules saying that certain people couldn't do things. There were rules saying that women couldn't be athletes. There were rules saying that Black people couldn't be athletes. So in a sense, we've always had politics. It really, really has always been there, because there have been written rules saying what people can and cannot do. And I think even when you look at gender and race, we also have another class aspect, because really amateurism as itself, when people decided that only amateurs should be able to play certain sports, you've really ruled out the poor, because who had the time, who had the ability and the resources? It was rich people. And unfortunately in our country, rich has been statistically speaking white and male. And so I don't know that we've had a time in our country where politics hasn't been an inherent part of sports. I do believe that where people get queasy is when today we ask people to really look at how it impacts you in terms of, am I as a person perpetuating a system, or am I trying to create a new experience that's fair and equitable for everybody? I go out and watch. I was watching yesterday the story. Iowa State played Oklahoma last night, and their stadium is called Jack Trice Stadium. It's the only stadium in the FBS that's named after a Black person. And when you go and look at his story, he was the only African-American male on their football team, and he died after a football game. He had an injury, and at the time, he couldn't ride back with his team. He was in one rail car, so there was no one there. And the reason that he had an injury that no one noticed and that he didn't have a team around him is because he was black and rules said he couldn't ride with his team. So I don't know that politics has ever not been a part of sports in the United States. I just think today we get uncomfortable with confronting ourselves and we say, I don't want it here when it comes to race or class or gender, because we just don't like to confront ourselves. That's my 2 pennies.
I have one thought. Is just I always operated that fair is what you accept. And at some point when you decide that something's not fair, you have to do something, or otherwise you accept it. And so, some of the things that have occurred, I think are people expressing the fact that, they're not in an agreement anymore. And, it's not only, the race issue today is so prominent, but it wasn't that long ago, right, when the U.S. women's soccer team was protesting that they weren't getting paid as much as the men's soccer team. So you had the gender issue, but, it always, the politics entering sports, I don't know, it just seems to be right now at its highest issue. And is it because it's an election year? Is it because we have a leader who is this really volatile leader that tends to, amplify the racial issues? Or has it always been there and it's just finally, bubbling up? I'm the white guy in a black community with the basketball that I deal with, and so far so good, but I haven't sat down to discuss this with my players with the current situation. I was actually, Randy, before even today, I was thinking I got to figure out how to have that conversation so that I don't get ambushed or blindsided or I'm just ignorant to what's happening. And but nothing like getting on your show for the number 1 question. This is such a softball for the first question to be here on.
Very, very hard question.
Yes.
So I'll give you a softball. Tips on how to create an eye-catching huddle.
All
you
right.
guys, I'm interested to hear what you say, Kevin, because you have an AAU team. So what do athletes listening to our show and their parents, what do they need to know about how to create a huddle that is eye-catching in today's world?
Okay, I want to go first. I want to go first because this is huddle's my baby. Like we can have a whole show about that. I talk about that on my podcast a lot. I'm in my podcast mode. That's why I got the headphones and mic and stuff going on. But I'm just going to talk about one aspect of it. Well, 2 aspects. Explosive plays. So like when guys play football or they play basketball, it's certain regular things that you do that every person can do. Maybe let me break that down a little bit. Every person can assist on a tackle. Every person can make a tackle. But having an aggressive tackle shown where you're really hitting somebody hard, or you're showing your speed where you come all the way across the field to catch up with somebody when everybody else stops. It got to be explosive plays. That's the biggest thing. When you put normal stuff that every person does in football, you got to think these coaches look at thousands of videos, so you have to put explosive plays. Also, you want to put, I can go forever about this conversation. Also, you want to put the extra things that you do that helps you stay on the field. So if you are a running back and you're an exceptional kick returner, punt returner, you want to put that stuff on there. But again, you want to put explosive plays. You don't want to put a play on there where you just ran 10 yards on a punt return. Also, if you are a tight end, wide receiver, running back, you don't just want to show your plays. You want to show your running plays or catching plays. You want to show that coach that you're multifunctional. You can block. You can block for other people. You're aggressive, all that kind of stuff. So if you look at your huddle and you look at the whole thing and it doesn't excite you, you don't go, whoa, or whatever, or you show it to somebody else and they look at it and they're not excited, you need to work on getting on that field and do more things that's explosive to show people that you're very aggressive, that you are not scared, because the next level is very, very hard. So that's my take.
Coach, do you have a hard feeling? Jamesetta, I was thinking about this question. I've never put together a huddle video, and I work with 8th graders, and so in middle school, and I'm not a huge advocate of middle school videos and things. I think middle school kids are nobodies, and so at that point, they just need to kind of just keep working. However, I do think I think a report card on your huddle video would not be a bad idea, and I'm just kind of shooting from the hip. But I think in my world, I try to tell these guys, everybody can dunk at the next level. Dunking is no big deal. But can you get good grades? Can you set a pick? Can you win a 50-50 ball? So the explosiveness, I'm with Randy, but if I was a coach, I'd be looking for all the things you're doing when you don't have the balls in your hand, and all the things that you're doing, on the bench, and your body language when you're picking up a teammate when they fall down. And I don't know how you put all that into a huddle video, but if I'm looking for guys to build championships, I want all those little things in addition to the fact that, you can hit the shot that matters. Can you hit the free throw with 1 second left? I don't know how many times they put that game-winning free throw on or maybe better yet, the first quarter free throw that avoids you have to make a game-winning shot. And so those are just some random thoughts, James. I'm sorry.
Kevin, let me help you a little bit on the basketball side. The basketball side is big too. Just like you said, but you have to be able to show every aspect of your game. You got to be able to show every aspect. So you need to have a session of you shooting. You need to have a session of you showing that you know fundamentals of basketball. You need to have a session on there showing your defense, that you're a dog, that you can get up on somebody and play man-to-man defense. You need to have a session where you show your steals, just every aspect of your game, especially if you're 6'3". 6'3" is normal. That's normal on Division I. It's not that many 6'3s, and 6'3s and up, it's different. But a lot of people want to put the dunks and stuff like that. But if you can show on there, and they have sections on there where you can type like to the side where they can see what you're trying to do. So you can subjugate each section that you do, your shooting, defense, pick and roll, stuff like that. Just showing the coach that you really understand basketball. You don't see too many basketball huddle highlights that's like that, because people just want to see dunks and athletic things. But if you're trying to get that scholarship, you just need to show that coach everything that you know as far as that. And with the grades, that's great. You don't have to put a report card. At the top of your huddle, your first screen, you're going to have your GPA and all that on there. So that's going to show everything he needs to know about your GPA and stuff like that. The only thing you're not going to be able to show him is your character. And hopefully he will call your coach and ask him about your character. But you just want to show every aspect on the basketball side.
So before Randy steals my thunder, I went out and I looked at some coaches get their feedback. And so the first thing I would say to parents and athletes, make sure your huddle link is unlocked. I've gotten feedback from coaches saying that they click on links and they're not available. So definitely make sure that it's unlocked. Randy alluded to this, but make sure it's clearly labeled. Like, is this a full game? If it is a full game, which game does it cover? What are you doing? Like all the sections. Make sure that it is really, really clearly labeled. You need balance. You need full game film, and you need highlights of you doing what you do. Really good audio visual quality. Be mindful of what you put out there in the space, because coaches have a limited amount of time. And if the audio and visual quality is not good, they're going to pass. Definitely stats, who you are, what grade you are, GPA, your measurables in terms of height and weight, and also awards that you may have won in your labeling. So those are just some tips that and feedback that I got from coaches. And you can take that, Randy, and add it with your feedback, and they'll have some wonderful huddle highlights.
So check this out. So one thing that I do, I don't like to take a lot of credit for nothing for my son, but the one thing I do take credit for is his huddle. So his huddle got him like 4 national awards because they couldn't see him other than seeing his huddle. So I took the power from the coaches and took over his huddle, I think in the 10th grade. And the thing that I did is, because I wanted to show many different aspects of his game, people usually do a huddle for each year. I took his huddle and I compiled all his years to show every aspect I think people needed to see. So I'm pretty proud about that. I'm pretty proud about that. So like I visually made him and Latrell, his brother, huddle, and I really think I did a good job on it. I tried to keep up with it.
If you want some awards,
Yeah.
Good job. So any other feedback?
Well, I guess, you guys point out a lot of great things about the basketball side. But let me share my points with you. Football and basketball, when it comes to huddle, is a hell of a lot more work, okay? One is because, you're on a court versus a football field. That's number one. The way you view a football player versus a basketball player is totally different. So there's a lot more work that goes into creating a huddle for a basketball player versus a football player. So I completely understand the difference between the two. I just never had to really get into it. I just know that basketball helps football players in a lot of ways and vice versa. When I look at hands, eyes, and feet and understanding where I'm supposed to be, why I'm supposed to be there, and how I move, whether it's angles, whether it's dotted lines, or whether it's verts, or whether it's horizontals. So for me, my recommendation to parents on the basketball side, you got to be ready to work. I mean, you got to be ready to, methodically really get involved if you're trying to showcase your son or your nephew or your cousin or whoever it may be, because it's a lot of work. It's probably, in my eyes, it's probably 10 times greater than football when it comes to putting together a huddle. So I completely understand it. Now, what I will tell you is that I agree with Coach Kevin about, the middle school ball, because middle school coaching has been watered down since I've been in Florida. You're only going to have a handful that could be able to impact some middle school kids. And when you find those, it's only maybe one or two on the team. And I only can speak of my experience from where I came from and where I'm at now. And I lived in 5 different states. So, and it's been the same everywhere. So for me, sometimes things are just too early for kids to be trying to do something, because what you really could do is hurt the kid, but you also can help him too to show his growth. But every kid's different, and you gotta be completely involved to understand what you're trying to accomplish for your son or your kid or whoever, and just knowing that what it's going to take to get there. I'm big on the little things, building a foundation to see where this is going and see if this is even worth it. So I agree with Kevin wholeheartedly with the middle school piece, and I'm just the fundamentals and the foundation for any student athlete. There's got to be one, and if it's one that hasn't been created, it's really not going to help them too much. It's going to hurt them more than it's going to help them. So that's why I like to coach youth football, to build it early so that when they get to the high school level, there's a whole lot of things that most coaches really don't have to do.
Yeah, I've argued with Kevin on this about the exposure aspect of middle school kids. Yes, all kids are different, but I tend to disagree, because I feel that kids should get out there. Because, so for instance, last week, somebody put out a video between my son and Jamal Murray from the Utah Jazz. Actually, when my son played against Jamal Murray was like, I ain't gonna say he was a nobody, but my son was the more talked about kid. But the aspect of somebody going back and finding a video between them, actually Jamal Murray was toasting my son, but we actually won the game, and my son did score a lot of points on him too. But he wouldn't have had that opportunity if it wasn't for youth exposure. You have several websites that rank kids at a very, very young age. And what that does is give them the opportunity to get to these camps and meet these people, the Chris Pauls, the LeBron James, at a very young age. And that could inspire a kid to work harder or do better. So, I wouldn't say throw away rankings or throw away huddles or throw away some of that stuff because it gives them opportunities that could develop their social and skill sets forever. You know, so it's just an opportunity.
Did I say throw it away?
No, Kevin. Me and Kevin argue about this all the time. Me and the other Kevin. But you agree with him, so I put both of y'all together.
Okay. Well, let me tell you something. See, this is the part I like, because this is where we're going to kind of backtrack for like 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it gets dirty with the politics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it gets cumbersome for a young kid if it's not managed right.
True.
So that's why I feel the way I feel about it. Sometimes you can move too fast and you can hurt the kid.
True.
And sometimes the kid is stomach enough because he got a parent like a Randy Wade that's managing stuff at a high level at a young age.
Yeah, true.
There's a difference.
So
that's why I say you have to build it early, work on the little things, and have a foundation, because now you won't run into those things. You know just as well as I know, that is a distraction for some kids. They can't handle that.
They can't handle it. Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah.
And then you don't have both parents involved, or you don't have a parent involved, or you don't have nobody that's managing it the way it needs to be managed for them to understand. They 12 years old or 10 years old or 9 years old. So what, the kid can play ball. He's an athlete. It's been that way all the time. We didn't have no exposure when we were coming up.
True.
It was word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, I feel that more basketball people get their props when people visualize them playing, when they go to these AAU tournaments or go to these games, high school games or middle school games, and word of mouth. It's different than football. Football, you can throw a tape up and see a kid run for 3 to 5 minutes on a tape, but you can't do that in basketball. You can show us some highlights, but what about the foundational parts that we were talking about earlier? It takes more in basketball to really display a kid from a huddle perspective than it does a football kid.
Yeah. Right.
I have a question for you, Randy, because you guys are talking about exposure. So I'm just going to throw this out here. We should probably talk about the merits of early exposure and the impact that it has on athletes. Toliver, no, sir, we're not going to talk about it now.
Oh yeah, because I'm gonna let it flow on that one.
Yeah, I'm writing it down. That's cool. I'm writing it down. That's a good one.
We're gonna move forward. That was a really interesting discussion.